Hey everybody, my name is Chris with Quilter Labs. Today I'm going to walk you through a basic overview of the Quilter Elevate pedal designed by Brian Neunaber. Okay, let's take a basic look at the inputs and outputs. Starting on the left and the back, we have an input, a 1/4 inch input. Just next to that, we have an auxiliary output that has a 1/8 inch output jack tied to a 1/4 inch tip ring sleeve output jack right next to it. Okay, just to the left of that, we have our line outputs. These are tip ring sleeve line outputs that are balanced connectors, although you can plug in a 1/4 inch cable and plug it into an amplifier or anything else as well. Right next to that, tied directly to these, we have XLR outputs. Just to the left of that, we have expression pedal input. That's a tip ring sleeve 1/4 inch jack. There's a MIDI in and a MIDI through. USB-C connection for connecting to a digital audio workstation as an input device, or for connecting to our online available web app. 220 milliamp 9 to 12 volt DC jack on the back there. So yes, you can run that with your one spot. And over here on the left side of the unit, we have our little blue light blinking by default when it's turned on, which is our Jam Link, which allows you to connect your Bluetooth device to the Quilter Jam Link functionality. Let's take a look at the surface of the unit. The surface of the unit is broken down into several different places. Starting on the top left, we have the programming group. This group of I call them buttons, but we actually call them cap sense buttons because they're capacitive touch sense. So unlike a traditional button that needs a contact and over time may break or wear out, these buttons just sense that your finger is there on top of it and then allows a certain function to be executed. So on the top left is our programming group of buttons. Just to the right of that is our float point technology OLED display. So unlike a lot of LED displays out there that can crack or easily be damaged, this one's actually floating in between a sandwich of styrofoam so that it will resist any sort of vibration or shock and prevent it from being damaged. Just above that, we have an input and an output LED indicator, which tells us if our input is active, number one, and output by seeing a green light, or red if it's overloaded, if it's a little bit too much input for it. Just to the right of that, we're going to function on this little group over here. This rotary encoder is a turn and push button. So you can use it to turn and then push to achieve whatever function you're trying to achieve. Beneath that is the level and expression controller for the current preset that we're working on. So how loud is that preset, and what do the expression controllers control in this case? There are several options. We'll go over that later. Global parameters affect all presets on the device. And to get to the setup menu for the entire unit, you actually hold for 2 seconds the rotary encoder. Now, down here on the bottom left, you notice that there's DSP blocks. Compressor, pre-EQ, gain, post-EQ, gate, modulation, echo, reverb, and cabinet. Level also affects the preset controls, but it functions as a control group. Note on the bottom, to bypass, we just hold for 1 second, and it will turn that function off. To enable it, simply touch it. Okay, moving down to the bottom left. This group actually controls two things. It's preset selection within a given list that we're on. So currently we are on, by pressing both, we can see the list. We're on all presets, but I can change the set list that I'm on by pressing up or down to cycle to the next one. To recall, we use the recall button just to the right of these two buttons. And that recall button allows us to not only recall, but to select the A or B variant of a given preset. If you hold that recall button for 1 second, it will bypass the unit completely. Useful when you're trying to troubleshoot if the Elevate is in the midst of several other pedals. Hold the button again to reactivate it. Okay, to the right of that, we have a tap tempo. So if we're utilizing something that has a tempo to it, we can tap that button to get that delay to synchronize with whatever we're playing with, in my case, 83 beats per minute. Okay, holding that button for 1 second will turn the tuner on and allow us to tune our instrument. Hold that button for 1 more second to deactivate the tuner. And that's it. That's the basic overview of all the functions and components on the back, side, and top of the Quilter Elevate. Okay, let's walk through a few basics. Right out of the box, when you turn the unit on, you'll be presented with a factory preset. So there's a couple of concepts we need to understand in order to understand how the unit is behaving and why it's going to do some of the things you're going to see it do. Okay, the first one is this unit has 100 default factory presets, factory preset 0 through factory preset 99. In order to see what preset you're working on, you can actually just turn the encoder, and it'll actually tell you. Factory preset 0 is Johnny Be Good. Factory preset 1 is You Really Got Me. Now, when we're changing between factory presets, we can press this button up above to select the A variant of the preset, or if we're standing up and we want to see the full width, we can press the up key. Just because that display is showing you Slow Dancing in a Burning Room does not mean that's selected. This little recall button down here is going to have a set of alternating lights until we press the button and recall the existing preset in the window. We can do the same thing by turning the rotary encoder, seeing which preset it is, and pressing in to select the A variant of the preset. Pressing the button one more time will select the B version of that preset. While you're testing out some of these factory presets, one of the things that you're going to probably want to do is begin to make changes. Let's say we wanted to add some echo to Wanna Be Sedated. All you have to do is touch one of the DSP blocks. Note that once I touched echo, the light above echo turned on. That's letting us know that echo is now active. The first thing we note is it brings up some information in the screen. In this case, it's bringing up information about how much of the echo is mixed in with the current preset. If I press reverb, it will enable the reverb. Another thing you may have noticed up on the top left is the save exit light is now illuminated. What this is telling you is that you've made changes to this factory preset. And before we can leave this preset variant, even if I want to recall B, it's going to ask, do we want to save the changes we just made to that preset? Since this is a factory preset, it's going to ask us if we want to save this as a new preset. If we say OK, it will automatically increment by 1 the preset name. We're just going to do that for now. Save. And the preset is saved as user preset 100, our first user preset. Okay, so that's the easy way, just using the factory presets, to create a new preset. But what if we want to start from scratch? Let's do that. New copy does exactly what you think it would. New copy, we have two choices, preset or list. Let's do a new preset. So I turn this knob to the left to new copy preset and press the enter key. I don't want to copy, I want to create a new one. And let's give it a name. We'll call this one, we'll just call it the number 1. Okay, save. And now we have a new user preset that's named the number 1. So now, in order to activate functions, we can easily press to enable DSP blocks. To disable a DSP block, you hold for 1 second. I'll save the changes that I've made. Remember, every preset has an A and a B variant. So all those changes you made to the A variant won't be there on the B variant of that preset. If we want them to be similar, we can either go in and set them up the same as we did previously, or we can go to New Copy, Import to this preset's B. This allows us to import from, by default, the same preset, import the settings for A from user number 1. Do we want to overwrite? Yes, we do. And just like that, this now has exactly the same presets as the A variant does. So you notice nothing changes if I switch between the two because they're now identical. So now, Going in and editing further, I can dive into each one of the preset blocks. But before we dive in, let's actually talk a little bit about two things: parameters and modes. Understanding parameters and modes. A parameter is all the basic fundamental building blocks of a DSP block. It's what enables us to do things like turn the gain up, or add delay time, or delay frequency, or regeneration of delays. All the little bits and pieces that actually make up, well, in the world of pedals, all the functions that a pedal might have. In the world of amplifiers, all the functions that an amplifier might have. So in its most basic concept, we're actually able to go in and fine-tune absolutely every aspect of the DSP block for each one of our core blocks. Okay, but there is one little catch. We might not understand all those core functions and every last way to program each one of them. That's why we've designed the Elevate with modes. A mode is a preset, if you will, collection of parameters. So rather than having to understand absolutely everything about how to program the unit out of the gate, we've actually made it easy for you. For example, let's press the compressor block. So we've enabled the compressor, and by default, it's showing us one of several options: light compression, medium compression, heavy compression, or subtle compression. It also gives us the option to import a custom mode from another preset. Now, by choosing one of these, let's choose subtle. If I press the button on subtle, and it will ask if I want to make this the custom mode. If I make that the custom mode, it will now enter all the parameters of a light compression into the system. Notice that now we're no longer dealing with modes, we're dealing with parameters. Modes simply allow us to quickly audition many different types. So let's try a heavy compressor. I'll make that the custom mode. And notice that everything has changed. The threshold is now greater, the compression amount is greater, attack and release are different times, gain and emphasis are all different, because now we're operating with parameters and not modes. So a mode, again, is just a collection of parameters. Each of the different DSP blocks has a different type of mode enabled for it. Let's walk through some of those basics. So right now, the basics for compressor block are threshold ratio, attack release, gain, and emphasis. And we'll walk through those in depth in another video. Pre-EQ. Pre-EQ modes have a couple of options in the case of pre-EQ. The first option is we can choose whether to use the post-EQ frequency and Q for our mid and high frequencies. Notice that I have a low, mid, and a high. By default, it's giving me a 3-band EQ. But if I change this from use post-EQ frequency and Q to 4-band 600, now it will set up a custom mode with a 4-band EQ. So basically, if you want a 4-band EQ, you would just set this for 4-band, and you can choose which of the mid and high frequencies you're choosing, or you can set it for a 3-band EQ with a frequency centered. You can edit that frequency later, and you'll find that it's very easy to actually do so. We'll choose a 3-band for now. So if I, again, notice if I press it, I go further into the menu where I can begin to make changes to things like the mid-band frequency, the mid-band Q. And now that mid-band frequency is centered at a specific frequency of 740 hertz. So looking through really quick, you see that we have a 3-band EQ. What if I were to change this to a 4-band EQ? So I'll make that my custom mode. I press this button again, and now I can choose between both mid and high frequency options. And notice that I now have a 4-band EQ, low, mid, high, and presence, which allows me to change and modify that additional presence parameter. Moving on to gain. Gain, by default, if you press the gain button, has a core gain. That's like the gain knob on your amplifier. The higher you turn it, the more gain that you're going to get. Press gain button again to cycle through the gain modes. So notice they're labeled based on what you would think this gain mode would sound like. Bright clean, warm clean, semi-clean, warm and smooth. I find it useful to set the gain where I want to hear it, and then go ahead and rotate through all the gain modes to find the one that I think sounds the best. I'll choose gritty. Make that my custom mode. And now we can take a look at some of the sub-parameters. In the case of gain, there's a lot more complex parameters. This is where modes are useful for getting close to the sound you want, and then using the additional parameters to dial it in. We'll dive deeper into the parameters in a different episode. But the basics are, we have 3 pre-gain stages, 1 post-gain stage. We have asymmetrical distortion function, bias, how much bias we have, positive or negative, and stereo, whether it's stereo or mono. Squish is functional control that allows us to automatically control how much gain we're going to allow the amplifier to go into. Moving on to post EQ. If I enable post EQ just like pre EQ and press the button 2 times, I can choose which of the modes I would prefer. In this case, 4-band or 3-band, and various frequencies for that post EQ. Gate. By default, every time we create a preset, the gate will be on, set to noise floor only. But we can choose, depending upon what we may be doing, various versions. For example, extreme gain if you want huge metal tone, but you tend to have a little bit of 60 hertz hum bleeding through. Extreme gain will help to control that. I'll make extreme gain my custom mode so we can see some of the sub parameters. Threshold of minus 55 dB, ratio of 0.5 to 1, attack and release times, and low frequency sensitivity. Moving on to modulation. Modulation, interestingly, is actually three different DSP blocks in one. We'll cycle through the modes so you can see the various modes, but let's take a dive in. So we'll just pick stereo flanger and dive right in. So modulation has tremolo, and you can choose between the type of tremolo you may have. It has modulation type 1, chorus doubler, stereo chorus, trichorus, vibrato, and vibrato pitch. These are the functions for modulation 1. Modulation type 2, stereo flanger. I'll choose detune doubler, and you notice that the doubler has various functions as well. How many hertz does it go, and how many cents does that actually translate to? We can also narrow up that frequency band if we only want this to modulate within a given frequency range. Moving on from there, echo. Once I activate it, I can choose between various modes of echo, giving me things like slapback, moving target, echo verb, all your basic food groups of delay. Choosing one and making that our custom mode allows us to take a dive into the parameters: regeneration, crossfeed, beats per minute, milliseconds, how much of a stereo image is it choosing, and which side is it choosing that from, subdivisions, quarter note, high filter, how many dB and what frequency. So if we want to darken that up, we can really, roll that way back. Low filter frequency, so how high do we want that low filter frequency to go? Bypass trails is what happens when you change to a new preset. If you want that if you want your trails to remain, leave it in bypass trails mode. Bypass normal will turn the thing off just like you had turned a pedal off. Okay, reverb. Moving on to reverb. There's various reverb modes. Of course, this has the altogether famous Neunaber wet reverb algorithm built into it. But we've set up modes that allow us to see functionally what we would imagine that reverb to sound like. Once we choose one of these modes, we can see we have decay, pre-delay, tone tilt, which is an easy way to really centralize what frequencies you want reproduced by the reverb, Low filter, high dampening. So if you only want your mid-range, you can dial this up and dial the top one back. And modulation. How much modulation do we want in that particular reverb type? Moving on to cabinet mode. In cabinet mode, we also have options: lively, aggressive, chime, airy, thick, sterile, clarity, warm bass cabinet, a bright bass cabinet. And these functions, once we choose a custom mode, allow us to change how far do we want our low frequency to go. What Q do we want for that low frequency EQ? What's our high dB? How much do we want to roll it down? How fast do we want that roll off to be? And what frequency do we want it to roll off? Damping factor allows us to go from everything from a JCM or the old JC120, all the way through to the most ridiculous of cabinets for a tube amplifier. Moving on to the final function in the control group over here, we have level. This allows us to change or modify our preset level, and pressing again will cycle us through those options that can be controlled with our expression pedal: volume, wah, echo, and reverb. So you can design it as such so that, for example, a second preset can function both as a volume pedal and control the volume of the reverb if you want to fade your reverb completely out at the end of a song. Okay, one more little cool note for you. Under wah control, we can choose expression in, MIDI controller, and that's the case for all these functions. But under wah, there's a special mode: auto. Auto will detect how hard you're playing a given note and automatically control wah for you. So that's all of the basics, with the exception of global. Global allows us to turn our headphones up, change our line output level up or down if we're dealing with someone with a mixer who can't seem to get the levels correct. You can actually control your line out levels from here. Line out EQ is disabled by default, but you can enable the line out EQ and what that EQ actually is. So if you want to modify that line out, coming back around here, how many dBs do I want that EQ to be in terms of low frequency, and what do you want that frequency to be? Okay, that's all the basics of the Quilter Elevate pedal. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you can follow as we teach you some of the basics on creating your own factory presets.